Alright, welcome back guys. By now you have finished with your basic layout of your website or your web page. Today we're going to take a look at something called Float. It's a property in the CSS styles that allows us to put two different divs side by side, okay, or two different sections side by side. We're going to use this float to create our sidebar and put it where we want it to go. Okay, it's kind of hard to explain, so I'm going to get into it and show you what it would look like without a float, and then show you how to add a float to it. So we're going to go ahead. I've got my work site open. I'm going to open up my index.html, and as you can see, we have set up our header, our menu bar, our nav bar, our body, and a footer. And let me go ahead and we'll go to File, Preview in Browser, and we'll see what this thing looks like in a browser. Okay, so here's what it looks like in a browser, just like you would expect. Notice that it fills up the browser. Okay, so back to Dreamweaver. We're going to go to our CSS Designer tab, down to Selectors. If you don't see Selectors here, make sure you have your style sheet selected under Sources. And now we see our selectors or our rules. And I'm going to show you kind of a shortcut to do this. Okay, we're essentially going to add a separate ID or a separate rule and call it Sidebar. I'm going to go and I'm just going to take this body, right click on it, and I'm going to duplicate it. Okay, and I'm just going to rename this duplicate Sidebar. Okay, now I can go in here and I can mess with this a little bit, change it around. First thing I'm going to do is change the background color. As you guys know, I like to do this so that we can see, we can tell our divs apart when we put it in there. Okay, now this sidebar is going to come up right next to our body div. So I'm going to have this sidebar right here on the right hand side. I could put it on the left. I'll tell you what, we'll just go ahead and put it on this left hand side here. Okay, so we're going to have a sidebar here and then our body right here on the right side. Okay, I'm going to have this sidebar take up about 25% of this page here, which will leave 75% for the body. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here to the sidebar CSS style, and I'm going to make its width 25% of its container. Remember, its container is the wrapper, and the wrapper is 940 pixels. So no more having to do math. No more breaking out your calculator. Dreamweaver is going to do it for you. It knows that this sidebar is inside that wrapper, and it's going to make it 25% of that wrapper for us. Okay, so 25%. I'm going to keep it at 500 pixels because I want it to be the exact same height as the body so that it fits right there beside the body. Okay, so that stays the same. I hit enter. It does nothing because I don't have it here in my code yet. But now I need to go to the body style. And since I'm going to put that sidebar right here next to it, and it's going to take up 25% of the space, I need to change this body's width to 75%, or the remainder of the space left. Okay, so 75%. Make sure you put the percent there, or you know, it might not put pixels. It'll put something weird. It's going to totally mess you up. Make sure you put the percent sign. Hit enter. And you'll notice right off the bat, since I have the body tag or the body div already here, it goes ahead and shrinks it. Okay, in my code for me, or in my design view. So now that I have all that set up, I've got the sidebar style set up, the body is changed. I'm ready to go in here and add the sidebar div. Okay, now I want this to be on the left hand side, so I'm going to put it before this, before the body div, since I want it to be before it on the left hand side. So I'm going to make a space here. I'm going to Control C, Control V, and change this to sidebar. Now you're going to notice something really funky. It's not going to look right off the bat. So let's hit refresh. and you'll see. Let's see what happened here. Let me go ahead and we'll preview this in the browser so you can get a good look at what happened. Or I'll just save it. I'll just have to refresh. Possibly. No. Okay. Preview in browser. There we go. Alright, so here's what happened. I'll zoom out a little bit. And what we have here, we have our sidebar in pink, 25% of the page. Then it throws in a 75% body, just like it looks in the code. Okay, so notice here, it does it just like it's written in the code. Sidebar and body. This gray area, there is nothing there. It's empty space. Okay, I don't want that. I need to move this body div up into this area. That will eliminate this, and it will push my footer up in its place. Okay, making the page look how I'm wanting it to look. Okay, so to get this div up to the top line, we're going to have to add a float to both the body and the sidebar CSS styles. So we'll go back into Dreamweaver, head over to our CSS designer. We'll come down to the sidebar first, since it'll be on the left side. Come down to properties, and we'll start typing in the word float. And we want this sidebar to float to the left side. And you won't see anything change, or not much change. But now we also want this body to float to the right side. So we want the sidebar on the left, body on the right. So we're going to click on the body, add another float to the body, only this time we're going to have it go to the right side. And you'll see that it fills up the rest of that 75%. So now we have a 25% wide sidebar, 75% wide body. But our footer has disappeared. This is the tricky part. The way that floats work, once we add a float to the right on the body here, it does not stop. That float continues to progress all the way into the footer. So our footer has floated to the right completely off the page. So what you have to do whenever you're working with floats is when you're done with your floats, you have to go to your div that is just under your last float and float it back to the left side. So I'll say that again. The sidebar is floating to the left, the body is floating to the right, and its float does not stop until we tell it to stop. So it has continued to float into our footer and has made our footer seem like it's disappeared. So we're going to go into our footer and we'll add a float to it, and we're going to take this float back to the left because the left is the default float. Okay, so once we take that back to the left, we'll notice that our footer shows up again. So again, float to the left for a sidebar, float to the right for the body, and then back to the default left side for the footer. Okay, so that's essentially how you're going to do floats. If you wanted to add more sections in here, more sidebars, more sections, you could certainly do that with floats. And we may look at that a little bit later, how to do 5 or 6 floats side by side to create sections on one line.